Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam Channel. I'm under the porch, which can only mean a few things. One of them is I'm going to be doing a movie review. So I've seen a couple of movies over the last month, always with an N95 mask, no popcorn for me, and I really want to talk about the most recent Matrix and the most recent Spider-Man, and in a way, how they are the same movie. Now, I'm going to be doing spoilers for both, so go to hell if you haven't seen them. So here's the thing. How are they the same movie? Well, there's a couple of superficial ways. One, they both have a real naming problem, which is like Matrix, Matrix Revolutions, Matrix Resurrections, Spider-Man Home, Far Away from Home, No Way Home, Home Again, Jiggity Jig. That's a superficial way. Okay, so we're talking about Matrix Resurrections and Spider-Man No Way Home. But then there's another way, which is even sillier, which has to do with my personal history with these franchises, which is my initial dislike of them because I'm a Star Wars fan. See, I came back from France in May 1999, and I was getting ready for Episode 1 to come out, and Matrix had just come out, and I had all my stupid XR friends tell me how Matrix is the future, and Matrix is way better than Episode 1, and they were wrong then, and they are even more wrong now. Episode 1 is an excellent masterpiece of a movie, and Matrix is quite a good movie. I'll get into that some other time, maybe. And the same thing happened 3 years later, where Spider-Man came out the same year as... Sorry, I have some icicle action behind me. Spider-Man came out the same year as Attack of the Clones. The same thing happened. Once again, Attack of the Clones is a far superior movie, even though Spider-Man did better. But that's not the reason that they're the same. The reason these movies are the same is much more academic. And that is... It's easy to see them, and I've seen comments from my friends and from people using the term meta and throwing it around. But I think that what we're seeing is going beyond meta. Because we've been stuck in this postmodern kind of meta hellscape for like over a decade now, with all these movies that are self-referential, that wink at the audience, that make references to past materials. You know, think of John Boyega's character Finn in Force Awakens holding up the remote, okay? That's a famous moment of sort of lowest common denominator, hey, remember this, member berries, okay? The great South Park episode about the member berries, that was the mode that we were in. Matrix Resurrections and Spider-Man, and I'll get to it later, the Candyman reboot, which is better than all the movies I've mentioned today, they are moving us to a different place. It is no longer mere referentiality. We are dealing with movies that are actually discussing not the old properties. That's not the subject of Spider-Man and Matrix Resurrections. It's about the idea of an intellectual property itself, the weight of IP, the transformation of everything into IP, intellectual property. These franchises, these behemoths, what is the relationship between the creator and the audience in these movies? Spider-Man and Matrix, despite both being made by gigantic mega corporations, managed to be essentially grad school papers on the relationship between the author and the reader. That's really what they are. They are not really references to the old movies. They are referendums on their own existence. Particularly The Matrix. What is The Matrix Resurrections about? The Matrix Resurrections is about, should there be a Matrix Resurrections? They are movies in which the fiction of the things that they're rebooting or continuing, that fiction is directly discussed by the people on the screen. It is an active conversation with the audience itself. And I find this to be delightful and engaging. I love it. We are in the middle of this discussion. And instead of it being, oh, where did Han Solo get his blaster? What happened to the proton pack in Ghostbusters? Instead of saying, where did that come from or where did that go, we are asking ourselves, what did it all mean? What did Andrew Garfield mean when he was Spider-Man? What did that phase of Spider-Man say about us and say about the artistic process? What do all these things, and what's the relationship? Oh, sorry, I hit my camera there. Exciting. Icicles. We are in the middle of this discussion, and I am a professor of French. I have read a lot of Roland Barthes, and I am depressed that often Roland Barthes is merely reduced to the death of the author. But it is an interesting question because the author is certainly not dead in these cases. But the author is being transformed, is becoming something of a cyborg. And the other part is not a machine, the other part is the audience. It is this discussion with the audience that makes these movies go beyond meta. And I need to very much emphasize the difference between what happened in Spider-Man and Matrix and what happened in Force Awakens. We don't see the ship or the Ecto-1, the Millennium Falcon, and go, oh, I remember that. It's not that. It's thinking. And what do they mean? And it's in particular a couple of scenes that I think stand out for both of these. And in the future, there's going to be other intellects, other YouTube people, and maybe people have already done this, who are going to put these scenes next to each other and say, hey, what was happening in culture in 2021? What was happening in culture in 2021? Beyond Donda, which is its own thing, I would say are these two movies, are these two scenes. The scenes, the first one, in which the three Spider-Mans are discussing with themselves the nature of being Spider-Man and what is Spider-Man. A question of essentialism, is there a Peter Parker? Is there a Spider-Man? Is there such a thing as an essential character? Now that we live in this age of reboots and redos, we've discovered that it's fractured. There is no Peter Parker. There are Peter Parkers. There is no Spider-Man. There is Spider-Mans. That's it. And the difference between them tells us about the society that created them, about America in 2015 versus America in 2002 versus America in 2021. And each of these conversations that's happening ends up being where not only are the characters talking to us as an audience, but they are talking for their creators. Tobey Maguire speaks for Sam Raimi. Andrew Garfield speaks for Mark Webb. Tom Holland speaks for the Disney Corporation. This conversation that they're having with each other about the nature of not only the character, but then it extends further and it becomes a discussion about the movies where they come from and how they're different and why they're different. It's what grad students live for, okay? Most people who watch this haven't gone to grad school, okay? And I get it. But you end up reading a lot of very fancy books, a lot of complicated books about the nature of audience and about the nature of the reader and the author, and a lot of questions about essentialism and can we get to what is somebody, and is there such a thing as an essence of a character, or is it actually formed by nature? Is it inborn? Is it nature, nurture, all those questions? These are some of the questions that are being had while you are sitting there in your N95 mask, grumpily looking at the person behind you eating popcorn and coughing. Matrix does this much better and goes much further. It's probably less enjoyable of a movie, just in terms of it just going to the movies. I mean, I watched Spider-Man just smiling the whole time. I actually didn't like the other two Home movies. I thought Far From Home was a mess and a waste of one of my favorite villains. Just terrible. I saw just a terrible, just bad movie through and through. Like basically nothing redeeming about Far From Home. Although it did set up this third one, which I liked quite a bit. Although if I never have to hear Benedict Cumberbatch speak in an American accent, is there a worse actor? Are Jared Leto and Benedict Cumberbatch the worst actors in Hollywood? I'm just going to put that out there. I know they've done good things in the past, but and Al Pacino. If I see those names on a movie poster, I go, there's going to be some bad acting. I don't know. I haven't seen that Year of the Dog one. Maybe that one's good. But The Matrix, I'd say, is better. And I think it's better, at least intellectually. It is definitely the first Matrix movie that I have completely enjoyed. I like the second one a fair bit. The third one I just don't remember. They got a little bit too heavy. They got too into their philosophy shtick. They got a little bit too dedicated to the idea of popularizing philosophy through science fiction, and I don't think that they were successful in doing it. What I love about this is how clear they make it that it is a referendum on whether or not it should exist and what did it mean in the first place. So we had the three Spider-Men talking, and in this scene, we have the pitch meeting for recreating the Matrix. And it's meta, but it's so much more than meta because we have the avatar for the Wachowski sisters, we have Keanu Reeves, and he's there representing them as the artist. And what's great is that he's not some kind of, Ayn Randian person who's in favor of the creator and against the vultures. He's not some kind of even Generation Xer, screw the corporations, we have to save the Matrix from the corporations. He's oddly passive. And you see him getting battered around by the people who are the mouthpieces of Warner Brothers, which in the movie is a character itself. I love the passivity because the Wachowski sisters are expressing, or maybe it's just one of them, maybe it's just Lana. I don't know why Lily's not involved. Please tell me in the comments, by the way, because I couldn't figure it out. This representation shows an understanding that the way that the question, what does the Matrix mean, takes up a big section and everybody's talking, and there's only one person who's not talking in that entire scene between the writers and the producers and the studio heads and the CEO. There's only one person who doesn't say what they think Matrix means. And that's Lana herself in the guise of Keanu Reeves. And that's very meaningful because that's the question. What is the relationship? How much does the Matrix... Can you hear the dogs? Tell me in the comments if you can hear the dogs. I do this out here to get away from indoor noises, and I got dogs. Anyways, this whole scene has this discussion of what is the Matrix, and a lot of it's about trans rights, it's left wing, it's right wing, and it's fascinating that the main cultural heritage of the Matrix is the red pill, is men's rights activists who very clearly don't understand anything about the politics. This is sort of like if the only thing we remembered about Star Wars was that Ronald Reagan created the missile defense system and called it Star Wars. That's the kind of offensiveness that it is, that the red pill is what we remember. But it's this referendum, what is the Matrix? And we don't ever really get an answer. And what I really enjoy is in this new one, they simplify things a little bit. The philosophy, it's pretty down the middle. It's kind of Platonist, again, this question of what's the nature of memory, what's the nature of essence, what is it that makes a person, what is sentience? I find it fascinating that both Matrix and Spider-Man, in this attempt to understand what they are as movies, they both realize that the villains are not the villains. Dr. Octopus and Mr. Smith both are the heroes at the end of the movie. They're the ones who save things. We're moving, and this is what happens. When you go to grad school and you start learning about all these different perspectives and all these different ways of analyzing culture, all the binary things that you come to understand about good and evil, they just flow away until you understand from a better perspective. You have better empathy with characters, you have better understanding of motivations of characters, you have better understandings of authors, to the point where that simple idea of good versus evil actually starts to go away. That's what we're seeing in Matrix Resurrections and Spider-Man Home Again, Jiggity Jig. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. I didn't know I was going to say all this. All these ideas keep coming to mind. I really enjoy, too, one line from The Matrix, nothing comforts anxiety like nostalgia. I believe this is not cynical. I believe this is the Wachowskis, or whoever it is that wrote the movie, giving us permission to understand why do we keep going to Star Wars movies, why do we keep going, why are we going to see the next Transformers, why do we keep watching all these reboots, that we're anxious. We're culturally anxious, and these movies provide us some kind of ease from that. It's both an indictment of that, but also an acceptance. Because we're sitting there and we're watching, and the nostalgia is everywhere. It's another thing that makes The Matrix particularly good is how heavy-handed it is by showing scenes from the old movie in the new movie. And they do it so consistently and so prevalently that I don't think it's just a mere flashback for people who haven't paid attention. I think it's a very intentional, very smart, and fun way of keeping this conversation going. I also enjoy very much how Warner Brothers is sort of the Matrix. This movie, much like the original, can be read in so many different ways. This could be just another Jean Baudrillard, welcome to the nightmare of the real, whatever. This kind of question of what is the nature of reality, and do we all live in a simulacra, Or it can be another anti-capitalist thing. But Warner Brothers is never quite... It's another thing this movie doesn't do which I'm happy it doesn't do, it doesn't really make Warner Brothers... Am I not supposed to say Warner Brothers? It's Christmas Eve. Why are you honking like that at your family? Get in the car! Grandma's not going to wait forever. Now I've lost my thought. I like that Warner Brothers and capitalism is sort of the enemy, but that's not the point of the movie. Now, let's talk about Ghostbusters. Why was Ghostbusters Afterlife so bad? And these movies are so good, in my opinion. Ghostbusters is so bad because it is most interested in how do you feel about the Ghostbusters. The Matrix and Spider-Man are so good because they ask you the question, what do you think about the Matrix and Spider-Man? What do you think about these movies? What do you think about their themes, their actors, their direction, their cultural legacy? Even though both Spider-Man and Matrix made me very emotional at times, I wasn't emotional because of nostalgia. I wasn't seeing the dead guy appearing. I wasn't seeing the proton pack as though it were the most precious holy object in the history of the world. The connection, the emotion of the movies came through your brain, came through your thoughts about what do these movies mean to me? What do I think about them? As a final plea, dear God, watch Candyman. Candyman 2021 does everything that Spider-Man and Matrix does, but much, much better. Candyman 2021 is my favorite movie of the year. Maybe I'll do an entire video about it once I can watch it again. It does all of this. It's a conversation with the audience about the original, except it's through the lens of race and the relationship between race and creativity and audiences and gentrification, and it builds on the themes of the original while exploring the themes of the original, while talking about the contradictions of the original. Candyman 2021, starring Morpheus from this movie. I should have looked up the name of the actor, but I'm too excited to do this dumb video and go upstairs and wake my kids up for some vanilla muffins from Wegmans for our traditional Christmas Eve breakfast. It does this really well. And that's what's happening. So hey, if I was a film studies professor and my job, and I was working at some tier 1 university, and I had to publish something, I would write Candyman, Spider-Man, The Matrix, when the audience took over. But I'm not, so I'm just gonna make this video and go upstairs and have a muffin. All right, until next time, happy holidays, and there's the camera.